was planning on making roasted Brussels sprouts one night, and I realized I completely ran out of time. So I was thinking, how could I do this really fast? I thought, I think I'll slice them really thinly and just saute them. But how do you slice these thinly without taking a lot of time? So I devised a system. There's a slicing disc in the food processor. So what I did was, I just put them in, and this is the genius part. It takes no time at all. So all I did is just trim the ends a little bit and just put them right in. I mean, how fast is that? So I'm just going to slice these Brussels sprouts and then saute them with a little oil and butter. And then just to give them extra flavor, I'm going to drizzle them with balsamic vinegar. Wait to see how easy this is. Slicing these by hand would take forever, but I love the food processor. It should be a national holiday for the guy who invented it. I think it was like in the 70s. It wasn't that long ago. This is 2 12-ounce packages of Brussels sprouts. And that's it. I mean, that's pretty easy, right? Okay, so now I'm going to saute them. Get these guys out of the way. So I'm going to heat up a large saute pan. You really want a big surface because you really want to brown them. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. 2 tablespoons of butter. Olive oil has a high burning temperature. The butter gives it flavor. Just let that melt. It's a really simple side dish. And if you have a few leftover Brussels sprouts in your refrigerator, you just shred them up in no time. Actually, in the summer, I like to shred Brussels sprouts like this, and I make Brussels sprout slaw. Okay, that's nice and melted. I'm just going to dump this whole thing in. It looks like it's not all going to fit, but it does. It really cooks down. So just put them all in. And now lots and lots of salt. Lots of pepper. I want them to taste great. And just saute it for about 7 minutes until they're all nicely cooked and really tender. And if it looks a little dry, you can always add a little more olive oil or butter. And if you're braver than me, you can flip it without a spoon. But I don't know, I feel like it's going to get all over the kitchen. See, it's all going to turn green. It's very important when you slice the Brussels sprouts to slice the green leaves as well, because it really makes it look gorgeous. See, it's already cooking down. Not bad. Cleanup's a little messy, but it's fun. I'm going to turn this on a little high. I love when they get a little caramelized and browned. This is like my favorite Christmas dinner. Is a roast loin of pork, sauteed shredded Brussels sprouts, and I make a potato and celery root puree. So good. It's so cozy in the winter. It's also great to make on Thanksgiving when you're short of oven space. I always try and do a few things on top of the stove. And actually, I don't want to move it around all the time, because if it sits a little bit on the bottom, it'll get nice and browned. So just let it sit a little bit and then toss it. Let it sit a little bit and then toss it again. A little more salt, if you can believe it. A little more pepper. You can actually do this ahead, too. You can prep the sprouts and leave them in plastic bags in the fridge, and then just saute them before dinner. My mother used to make Brussels sprouts, but they were boiled, and they were just, like, dreadful. Sorry, Mom. And when I started the store in East Hampton in the mid-'80s, we used to make roasted Brussels sprouts, which nobody could believe, because they're sort of crisp and delicious. This is the next generation of Brussels sprouts, sauteed. Okay, these are just about done, I think. Ooh. Very hot. So good. I think they're done. One last toss. Perfect. See how they really do cook down? So now off the heat, I'm going to drizzle it with balsamic vinegar, and that edge is going to make them taste so good. Just drizzle enough on, just like this. Is really syrupy, old balsamic vinegar, and it's delicious. Okay, that's it. Time to plate it up. So, of course, I always have a white plate, which I think is Just gorgeous. Makes the Brussels sprouts look best. Just put it on the platter. Just like that. Maybe a little salt. Another drizzle of balsamic. I mean, how good does that look? I would say this isn't your grandmother's Brussels sprouts. This is a new age of Brussels sprouts. They're so good. And the balsamic is fantastic. 4 ingredients. I mean, how easy is that? I love these. This recipe and more can be found in my book, Cooking for Jeffrey, or at barefootcontessa.com. And it starts with a pâte à choux dough. I'm going to show you how to make it. It's really easy. 1 cup of milk, and heat it up with 1/4 pound of butter. And just bring that to a simmer. This is actually the same dough that makes éclairs, makes profiteroles, and all kinds of cheese puffs. So just heat this until the butter melts, and then bring it to a simmer. You don't want the milk to boil. It's simmering now. You can just see the bubbles around the edge. So I need salt and pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and now 1 cup of flour. Okay, level it off. Okay, and then I'm just going to dump it in. Stir it really vigorously for 2 minutes on low heat, and you'll see it all come together. Okay, that's about 2 minutes. When you see a light coating of flour on the bottom of the pan, you know the dough is ready. Okay, now off the heat, and now I'm going to dump it into a food processor. Just pour the whole thing in. Watch how cool this is. I'm going to add 4 eggs and lots of cheese. 1/2 cup of pecorino and 1/2 cup of Parmesan. They have slightly different flavors, and I like them together. Put the lid on and just process it just until it all comes together. It's going to be really thick. And that's the dough. I mean, that's pretty easy. So now I just have to fill a pastry bag. I've got a really big one. It's 18 inches, and I've put a plain round tip in it. The tip is about 5/8 inches across. Okay. Just squeeze the dough down to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to show you how I do it. Just put your pastry bag down like this and have them come out, just like that. You can do about 20 on each sheet pan. So now, I don't want pointy little cheese puffs, I want rounded ones. So I'm just gonna take a wet finger and just press down the top of each one. Okay, now I'm gonna brush them with a little bit of egg wash. Okay, a few more things. I'm gonna put a sprinkling of pecorino on the top of each one. Just make sure it has great cheese flavor. And then, because you want them to be really spicy, sprinkle them with salt and pepper. Okay, ready to go into the oven. 425 degrees for 15 to 20 minutes until they're puffed and golden brown on the outside and still soft inside. You're not gonna believe what they look like when they come out. How fabulous do those look? They smell so cheesy and peppery. Okay, now I'm just gonna put them on a platter. A little fleur de sel to finish. Everything tastes better with more salt. And see, Cacio Pepe cheese puffs, they're not so daunting after all. Now I just need a good glass of Italian wine to go with it. And my friend Antonia is coming. She thinks she's coming for dinner, but I'm making it a surprise party. I've invited some of her friends, and it's gonna be an Italian-themed party just for her. So the centerpiece of it is a whole filet of beef. But I'm gonna do it with an Italian twist, balsamic vinegar. So I'm starting with 1/4 cup of Dijon mustard, 2 tablespoons of balsamic vinegar. You want to pick a really good one. This one's very syrupy, so it's sweet and also vinegary at the same time. It has great flavor and has that nice edge. 2 teaspoons of salt. Remember, this is an entire filet of beef. It's got to have great seasoning. Okay, I'm just going to mix these together, and then I'm going to brush it on the beef. So what I did was I asked the butcher to trim and tie a whole filet of beef, and it's going to really flavor it. My friend Brent Newsom taught me how to make this. I think he's the best caterer in the Hamptons, and that's saying something. So I think a lot of people are nervous about roasting a whole filet of beef. I mean, it seems like a daunting thing, but it's actually really simple. As long as you follow a precise formula, high temperature, 500 degrees, 30 minutes, it comes out perfectly every time. Whole filet beef is about 5 to 6 pounds, and it'll feed probably 10 to 12 people. Okay, now the good part, cracked pepper. 2 tablespoons of cracked pepper. It's coarsely cracked pepper. It's kind of like when you have steak au poivre. It's really coarse pepper. And 2 tablespoons seems like a lot, but remember, it's an entire filet of beef. Into the oven, 500 degrees for 30 minutes, and it's gonna be perfectly medium rare. I'm gonna take the filet beef out. It's been roasting for 30 minutes exactly. I like nice thick slices, about a ½ inch thick. It's gonna look gorgeous. I'm gonna start the dinner tonight, my French bistro dinner, with a nice warm butternut squash salad. The kind of salad that you might find in a classic bistro in France, but with the volume turned up. It's got cold arugula, warm butternut squash, and a maple drizzle on it. It's so delicious. So I'm starting with 1½ pounds of butternut squash. I've peeled it, just taken out the seeds, and I'm just gonna cut it in big chunks. Just right onto a sheet pan. I do everything on a half sheet pan. Big drizzle of olive oil, about 2 tablespoons. About 1 tablespoon of good maple syrup. Use the real thing, makes a difference. Lots of salt and pepper. Clean hands. Just toss it all together. So I'm gonna bake at 450 degrees for 15 minutes. It's gonna be nice and brown. Then I'm gonna turn it with a spatula. Add some cranberries for the last 5 minutes. They get nice and plump and it really brings out their flavor. Okay, into the oven. So the next thing I'm gonna make for the salad is a warm vinaigrette, which is a little unusual. Most vinaigrettes are cold. But what I'm gonna do is reduce it, really intensify the flavors, and the warm vinaigrette really gets into the butternut squash. It's delicious. First thing I'm gonna use is 3/4 of a cup of apple cider. You can use apple juice, but apple cider, if you can find it, is even better. And to give it a little bit of a vinegary edge, since it's a vinaigrette, I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. It's sort of the sweet and sour thing at the same time. And then 2 tablespoons of shallots. So I'm just gonna let that reduce. It'll take about 6 or 8 minutes until it's really concentrated. The flavors are really melded together. In the meantime, I'm gonna go turn the butternut squash. I love the smell of butternut squash. So it's about half done, and I just want to turn it so it browns evenly on all sides. I want to make sure it's in one layer so it browns evenly. Into the oven. That's going to take about another 10 minutes. So the vinaigrette's reduced. Oh, that looks nice. It's really concentrated flavor. So now I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of mustard. And what that's going to do is make an emulsion out of the vinaigrette. Half a cup of olive oil. And just whisk it in. Off the heat. About a ½ teaspoon of salt. 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And just whisk it all together. I think he's gonna love this dinner. I'm gonna add cranberries to the butternut squash. Just about 3 tablespoons in the last 5 minutes of cooking. Really brings out their flavor and plumps them up. Time to assemble the salad. So the first thing I have is 4 ounces of arugula. It's gorgeous baby arugula. And I love it because it's got a nice peppery flavor. And it's great with the butternut squash. As soon as the butternut squash is done, I'm gonna put that on top. But first, I'm gonna grate some Parmesan cheese. I always use Reggiano Parmesan. Usually when I grate Parmesan, I grate it in a food processor with a steel blade. So it's sort of ground, not grated. But for this salad, I think big grates would be just terrific. That should do it. I think the butternut squash should be just ready. How gorgeous that looks. Isn't that wonderful? So I'm just going to take the warm butternut squash, put it right on top of the arugula. It'll wilt the arugula, which is perfect. Okay, next I'm going to put some walnuts, about a half a cup of toasted walnuts. I dry roasted them in a pan. Really brings out the walnut flavor. And lots of the grated Parmesan cheese, 3/4 of a cup. And the warm vinaigrette, it's sweet and it's sour from the vinegar. Just pour it all over. And just toss it all together, the spinach and butternut squash. It's got such great flavors, great autumnal looking salad. I would say that's going to be perfect for Jeffrey's dinner. Now, all we need is a glass of champagne. Jeffrey's going to think we're in a bistro in Paris, right there on our side porch. It's Friday. Jeffrey's coming home tonight. Just when he's expecting yet another roast chicken, I always like to shake it up a little bit. So I'm making an old-fashioned Jewish dinner with brisket, carrots, onions. It's going to be really good. Whoa, that's a big piece of meat for 2 people, but it's like making a beef stew. It lasts forever and you can reheat it. It's a very big brisket for 2 people. I'll show you how easy it is. I'm going to make a rub for the top. 2 tablespoons of salt. I know it seems like a lot of salt, but it's a big piece of brisket. 1 tablespoon of garlic, chopped up garlic. 2 teaspoons of dried oregano. And 2 teaspoons of freshly ground pepper. Just going to smush that all together and then rub it on top of the brisket. Okay, that's appropriately smushed together. I'm just going to sprinkle it on the top and then rub it in. Brisket's a great cut of stewing meat to buy. When you go to the store, make sure you don't buy a corned beef brisket, which is the same cut, but it's already been processed with spices and salt. Okay, that's done. I'm going to put on a pound of carrots. Just chop them up in chunks, and it's going to stew along with the beef. It's going to be really good. These are big carrots, too. Pound of carrots can be anything from 2 big carrots to 5 small ones. Okay, and then 8 stalks of celery. Just cut off the ends a little bit, the brown ends. And then just cut it in chunks. Remember, this is going to stew for 3.5 hours. Celery. Okay. And onions, I've got 6 onions sliced all over the top. This already looks like it has a lot of flavor, doesn't it? And some bay leaves for flavor. These are beautiful bay leaves. 6. How's that? Okay, and then I'm going to pour good tomato juice all over the top of it. Just enough to come up about 3/4 of the way up the beef. So just pour it right on top. And this is going to make the sauce after it cooks. Okay, now we're just going to cover it and bake it. So I'm going to cover it with aluminum foil. But first, because I don't want the foil to touch the tomato juice, it reacts really badly. I'll either cover it with plastic wrap or parchment paper. Into the oven, 350 degrees for about 3.5 hours until it's fork tender. So that was pretty fast for dinner that could feed probably 10 people. But for tonight, it's just Jeffrey and me. Brisket and vegetables, it's a whole meal in one. I like to make things that are just warm and familiar and make people feel really good. So, in that vein, I'm making roasted winter vegetables for TR. The key to roasting vegetables is you want to make sure you have big chunks of vegetables, because when they roast, they sort of shrink down a little bit. So, I have lots of carrots. I'm going to mix them all in this sheet pan together. This is a butternut squash. It's one of my favorite vegetables. It's sort of tough, you'll see on the inside. And what I've done is I've peeled it, just like that, all the way around, and then cut it in half. And cut out the seeds, and then chopped it in big cubes. So I've already got one done, which is all I need. So that's just gonna go right on the sheet pan with the carrots. Okay, the next thing is sweet potatoes. Somehow sweet potatoes and yams always get confused, but what you find here is always sweet potatoes. Yams are more of a yellow and a little sort of starchier. And the next thing is parsnips. So if you haven't seen a parsnip, this is it. Looks like a carrot. It's not orange, obviously, it's white, but it's really, I just think they're really delicious. And they're sort of sweet the way carrots are sweet. So you can cut them in half like that in big dices, but I've got it already peeled and diced. So it's just gonna go on the sheet pan. How easy is that? Just cutting and chopping. And now what I'm gonna do, I'll get them ready for TR to roast in the oven by pouring olive oil. Lots of salt. Remember, vegetables really use up the salt, so you wanna make sure it's well seasoned. And freshly ground pepper. Right on top. It's a really simple vegetable because there's so many different kinds. It's also really flavorful. Okay, and then I'm just gonna toss them together with my hands. So TR's just gonna put this in the oven with a baked Virginia ham, and I'd say his friends are gonna be really impressed. Butternut squash is the perfect thing for risotto with saffron. The saffron's really spicy, and the butternut squash is really sweet. When you're peeling butternut squash, you want to use a nice sharp peeler, not those sort of vegetable peelers that you find in the hardware store. You want something really good, and this one's really sharp. This is the quickest way I find to peel it. Just peel the entire outside, and then get a really good, big, sharp knife, major knife. Cut it in half. Keep your fingers out of the way, just like that. Cut off the end like that. So stand it up. Cut it in half. You can boil this, but instead I'm going to actually roast it. I think it really brings out the sweetness, sort of caramelizes it a little bit. So this part's the easy part. Just a good dice. So that's the top of it. And then the bottom, just going to cut it in half. Take out the seeds. You can actually roast those, they're like pumpkin seeds. But I prefer the butternut squash. And then again, just do big cubes. They don't have to be perfect squares, so don't obsess about it. Okay, that's one butternut squash. A little olive oil. Salt and pepper. Okay, toss it all together. Into the oven, 400 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes until it's really tender and sweet. Butternut squash is already in the oven. It smells so good. I need 6 cups of chicken stock. I really like to use homemade chicken stock, but if you don't have it, use a can. Okay, now some pancetta. Pancetta is Italian bacon, but frankly, any kind of good quality bacon would do too. So I'm just going to dice it up. It gives great flavor to risotto. So some butter, about 6 tablespoons into the pot, and the pancetta. I need 2 large shallots, or about a half a cup. Okay, now I need 1½ cups of arborio rice. It's the Italian rice, really special for risotto. I'm just gonna pour it right in. Okay, that's good. All the rice is coated with butter, so it's perfect. Now I'm gonna add a half a cup of white wine. Now this is the key to good risotto, is you wanna add chicken stock by the ladleful, 2 ladles at a time. If you add it too fast, the risotto cooks on the outside and not on the inside. If you add it too slowly, it gets mushy. 2 ladles, and then I'm gonna add the key ingredient, which is saffron. which I love. It's spicy. It's the stamens of crocuses, which is why it's so expensive. About a teaspoon of saffron. Give it a stir. And then probably take about 25 minutes. As the stock is absorbed into the rice, you just want to add another few ladlesful. Needs just a little more stock. Butternut squash is perfect. You want to do this as soon as the risotto is completely cooked and the rice is done. Just stir it in. And the last thing I need is 1 cup of grated Parmesan, and this is the most delicious lunch, all in one pot. And the good news is, it's ready. First thing I'm doing is sauteing about 1.5 cups of onions in some butter. And I like to saute them so they're really nice and translucent and maybe just a little bit brown. The butter can brown a little bit, it'll make a dark gravy. And I have here about 2 cups of chicken stock. Homemade chicken stock's great. If you can't, just use a really good canned stock. And I'm going to pour all of these drippings into that to really enrich it and give it lots of flavor. Now I need a little flour. About 1/4 cup of flour goes in with the cooked onions and butter. And this is what's going to thicken the gravy. Okay, cook that for about a minute. And then I'm going to pour in this hot stock. And you'll see it's going to thicken up beautifully. This is the way to prevent having lumpy gravy, which is everybody's nemesis. So about a teaspoon of salt. I like to use kosher salt. Turn that down. And a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Cognac is really very good brandy from the Cognac region, so you can use any kind of brandy or cognac that you have around the house. Oh, I love the smell of that cognac when it hits the hot gravy. It's just fabulous. I have some leftover white wine, so I'm going to put a splash of white wine in. That should be good. And then the last thing is a little bit of heavy cream. You can do this or not, but I just think it enriches it enough so that it really gives it special. Okay, and then the good part, I get to taste it. Zucchini can be a little bland, but trust me, there's nothing bland about my baked spinach and zucchini. It's got lots of great flavors in it. So I'm starting with about 1 pound of zucchini. You want to choose zucchini that are about the same size. You don't want like big, thick zucchini because they get kind of woody in the middle. These are really small and just really tender. And I sliced them all about 1/2 inch thick. I've heated about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in a pan. I'm just going to put the zucchini in. Okay, so that's 1 pound of zucchini. And I've got 6 scallions I've chopped up. Put them all in. And give it a little stir. So I'm just going to saute this for about 3 minutes, just until it gets softened a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to prep the garlic. So I've got 2 cloves of garlic. This is the way a chef once taught me this. Is if you smash the garlic, you get the best flavor from it, and it's really easy to chop. Just like that. And just cook this for 1 minute. I never cook garlic for more than 1 minute, otherwise it gets that burnt flavor. You want it just like a hint of great garlic. Okay, I'm going to turn off the heat, and next is spinach. And I'm going to use frozen spinach instead of fresh. It is so much easier, and it's really good. So I've got 2 10-ounce packages of frozen spinach that I've kind of pressed out most of the water, but you don't want all the water pressed out because otherwise it gets really dry. So there are very few vegetables that are better frozen, but this is one of them, spinach, as opposed to huge piles of fresh spinach. Just stir that in. Okay, next is a cup of cooked basmati rice. I just followed the directions on the back of the package. Just give some substance to the dish. And if there's any liquid from the spinach, it'll absorb it. Okay, next I've got 2 herbs. 1/4 cup of minced fresh parsley. Gives it lots of fresh flavor. And 1/4 cup of julienne fresh basil. Okay, next is a little nutmeg. Just great with this dish. Just a hint of it. 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, because I think everything needs a little acid. It kind of wakes up all the flavors. 2 teaspoons of salt. May seem like a lot, but this vegetable's a little bland and you want the flavors to really pop. Sprinkle it around so it's well distributed. 1 teaspoon of pepper. This is a great make-ahead dish. You can put the whole thing together in advance and just throw it in the oven before dinner. Okay, give that a big stir. So for the custard, I've got 4 extra large eggs, 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream, a little bit of butter. I melted 2 tablespoons of butter that are gonna go right in. And you wanna whisk them in because if the butter's warm, you don't wanna cook the eggs. I'm gonna add 1/4 of a cup of Parmesan cheese. I'm gonna put more Parmesan on top. Okay, so that's the custard. So you can put this all in one big dish, but I thought it'd be so nice to put them in little individual cast iron skillets so everybody gets their own skillet. So I've greased the inside of it. I'm gonna get 6 skillets, so a 1/6 of the vegetable, just put it right in. I'm just gonna pour the custard right over the top. I'm just gonna top it with a little Parmesan cheese and some Gruyere. Just grate it right on top. So they go into the oven, 350 degrees for 20 minutes. And happily, I have some already baking, so I can show you how good they look. They smell so good. Parmesan-roasted broccoli. For everybody who thinks they don't like broccoli, you have to try this. So it's in 2 parts. First, I'm gonna roast the broccoli. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is toss it with lemon juice, pine nuts, basil, give it lots of flavor. So it's up to you how much of the stock that you use, but I like a little bit of stock. I want it to look like broccoli. That's about 2.5 cups of broccoli. That's enough for 2. So I need garlic. I'm just gonna sliver it, slice it really thinly, give it lots of flavor. The thing about roasting vegetables is you wanna do it at high temperature so it really caramelizes the flavors. Just toss it together with the broccoli. Drizzle of olive oil. It helps the cooking. Lots of salt and pepper. Just toss it all together. Clean hands. Into the oven, 425 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna add lots of other flavors. Lemon juice, basil, it's gonna be great. So I'm gonna make a topping for the broccoli. Broccoli's roasting in the oven, a little garlic, olive oil, salt and pepper. I'm gonna start with about 1/2 teaspoon of lemon zest, about 2 tablespoons of good Parmesan cheese. I always use good aged Reggiano Parmesan. Makes such a difference. Okay, that doesn't have to be exact amounts. I'm gonna use basil, like 6 leaves of basil. These are big leaves. I'm just giving them a quick julienne. So what I'm doing is I'm roasting the broccoli, and then when it comes out of the oven, I'm just gonna put this little topping on it. It really flavors it. Just cook it for a minute until the cheese melts. Even kids will eat broccoli this way. Okay, and then the last thing is 1.5 tablespoons of toasted pine nuts. I just toasted them in a dry pan, and it really brings out the flavor of the pine nuts. You know, when they're in the jar, they're sort of bland, but when they're toasted, they're just delicious. I'm just gonna make a little mixture here on the board. Just toss it all together. Okay, next the broccoli. That looks great. Lots of toppings, give it more flavor. All the Parmesan cheese is gonna melt onto it. Pinoles and lemon zest. And then a little olive oil and lemon juice, just kind of like putting a little vinaigrette on it. Give broccoli as much flavor as possible. A little squeeze of lemon juice. Okay, into a serving bowl. I'm gonna roast it with brown sugar and get it really caramelized. It's so good. This is 2 butternut squash cubed. Cube them really large. I think they look better and they roast better. And then I'm gonna add some melted butter. It's a holiday, so you can use butter. Brown sugar, which caramelizes them. Lots of salt. Black pepper. And this is the messy part, clean hands. Just toss it all together. And that's it. I'm going to roast at a really high temperature, 400 degrees, for about 45 to 55 minutes, and the outside gets really browned and caramelized, and the inside is really juicy and sweet. How easy is that? In my experience, if you don't make mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving, somebody's going to complain. So I'm going to show you my classic mashed potatoes and 3 variations just to turn up the volume. So the potatoes are cooked. Test them with a knife, make sure they're perfectly cooked. And they are. So I'm just going to drain them. Ooh, nice steam bath. Okay, at this point, basically most people would use a potato masher or a food mill, but I'm going to do them in an electric mixer, and they come out really creamy and chunky at the same time. So good. I'll put them in the bowl of an electric mixer, turn it on low speed for a few seconds just to break them up. Then slowly add a hot mixture of 1 cup of whole milk and 6 tablespoons of melted butter. This makes the potatoes really creamy. Then I'll add a half a cup of sour cream, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Give it a final mix and the potatoes are done. So once you've nailed the classic recipe for mashed potatoes, you can use it for all kinds of incredible variations. Let me tell you about some of mine. Idea 1, add 3 ounces of room temperature white truffle butter to the mashed potatoes. Mix it in, and classic mashed potatoes become truffle mashed potatoes. It's so luxurious. Idea 2, add half a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and you have Parmesan mashed potatoes, spicy and delicious. Idea 3, into a pan, just add half a cup of garlic cloves to half a cup of olive oil, bring it to a boil, lower the heat, and simmer it for 20 minutes until the garlic is soft and just lightly browned. Then turn off the heat and let it cool. After 20 minutes, add the tender garlic cloves to the mashed potatoes, along with 3 tablespoons of the garlic oil. Mix them in, and wow, really garlicky mashed potatoes. That's 3 variations that everyone will love. But don't forget the classic. It's really good too. I just can't help myself. I have to try it. It is. It's creamy and chunky. You can really taste a little sour cream. So good. Gratins are terrific. Potato gratin. I like to make zucchini gratin. But for this dinner, I'm going to make cauliflower gratin. So I've got a 3-pound cauliflower. I'm just going to cut it up into florets. Okay. Big pot of boiling salted water. That's just going to boil for about 5 or 6 minutes until the cauliflower is just tender. In the meantime, I'm going to make a delicious white sauce. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up 2 cups of milk. In the meantime, I'm going to grate some cheese. I need about 3/4 of a cup of Gruyere. About half of the cup is going to go into the sauce, and then I'm going to put some on top. It gets all brown and delicious. Okay. So about 2 tablespoons of butter. Okay, 3 tablespoons of flour, all at once. So I'm just going to cook the flour and the butter together. It actually becomes like a paste. I'm just going to pour the milk right in. Whoa, really hot. And then just stir this, and you'll see it really thickens up, so it's a really good white sauce. Oh, it's really nice and smooth now. Actually, you can see it really coats the back of the spoon nicely. Okay, it's thick enough. I'm just going to turn it off the heat and add some great flavor. First is salt. I need a teaspoon of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and the next thing is really classic French spice. So 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg, and then lots of delicious Gruyere cheese, about a half a cup. And I add Parmesan. It's not so classic for French gratins, but it gives it a nice nutty flavor. About a half a cup of grated Parmesan. And then just stir it together. Oh, it smells so good. You can really smell the nuttiness of the Gruyere and the spicy Parmesan and even the nutmeg. Okay, that's done. I think the cauliflower is ready. nice steam bath. And this is the gratin dish I'm gonna use. It's about 8 by 11, but it doesn't have to be exact. So the first thing I'm gonna do is put about 1/3 of the sauce in the bottom. It even looks like it has a lot of flavor, doesn't it? And then the cauliflower. And then the rest of the sauce. That actually looks good already, but I'm gonna make a nice crumb topping so it gets brown and crusty. It's gonna be so good. Okay, so I need a little bit of butter. So it's 1/4 cup of breadcrumbs, 1/4 cup of Gruyere. Just gonna mix this together. And I'm just gonna sprinkle it over the top. And then just drizzle it with a little bit of butter. Never hurt anything. And I'm just gonna leave that to room temperature, and I'm gonna refrigerate it and bake it just before the party. Cauliflower gratin. Oh, this smells so good. So the first thing I always do with a cheese platter is put down some green leaves. These are fig leaves from my garden, but if you don't have a fig tree in your garden, you can use hydrangea leaves, you can go to the florist and get Galax leaves, whatever you have that's sort of big, green, and flat. Okay, the next thing I always do is I always put a big bunch of grapes right in the middle. It can be a couple of bunches of grapes, actually. The first time I did a cheese platter was like 40 years ago, and my friend Anna Pump was with me. And I don't know what it looked like, but it probably looked like a dog's breakfast. And she came over to me and she said, okay, now take everything off the platter. I was like, okay. And then she said, okay, now put the grapes in the middle, the cheese around the outside, and big blocks of crackers and apricots. And then she said, and stop. Those are 2 really good lessons, is to do it really simply and beautifully, and then stop. Okay, so we've got a big bunch of grapes in the middle, and then I'm gonna put the cheeses on the outside, as Anna taught me. So I have different kinds of cheeses. I like soft ripening cheeses like brie, like this is one. I have a blue cheese. This is English Stilton, which I adore. And you want the rinds in and the cheese facing out. And this is incredible. This is pecorino with truffles. So it's an Italian cheese that's just so flavorful. And the last one is a goat cheese. So now I've got all different shapes and flavors. I've got creamy things, I've got crumbly things, I've got hard, sharp things. And the goat cheese, which is called fleur verte, is a very creamy goat cheese with herbs on the outside. So just put that right there. So now I've got extra space on the platter to put other things. And I love things that like go with cheese. So fresh strawberries are great. So I'm just gonna put a big bunch of fresh strawberries on. And just kind of paint it, just keep it really casual. So when I do a cheese platter, I always do it as a second course. So there's a main course, the cheese course, and dessert. And you want to do it not when you're making filet beef for dinner and like chocolate mousse for dessert, because people will go home holding their bellies going, oh, I'm never eating again. You don't want that. So I always do it when I have something light like fish or a stew, like a fish stew. And then I serve something like granita for dessert, because this is a pretty rich course. So that's strawberries. Then I'm going to do maybe some apricots in the middle. So big blocks of color. You don't want it to look like that original one that I did, which looked like a dog's breakfast. And then I always like other things that taste good with it. So a little fig jam is wonderful. Like the blue cheese and the fig jam is great together. So I'm just going to, really, it's all store-bought. Just put a little bowl in with fresh fig jam, a little knife, and everybody can help themselves. Sometimes people serve cheese as a first course, like before dinner. I just think people fill up on cheese. You want it to be like a treat after dinner. I love this. I love fig jam and Stilton together. Okay, now crackers. So I have different shaped crackers and different colors of crackers. So I have light crackers like these sticks. They're really delicious, just like that. Just put them right on. And then I have dark crackers that are like little crisp things. So I'm just gonna put them around. I don't even need room, which is exactly when it looks the best, when it's all like full and sumptuous. If you're gonna make a cheese platter for a lot of people, don't get more kinds of cheese, just get bigger pieces. Or cheese platter for a smaller group, the same thing. Smaller pieces of cheese. Okay, I think I'm gonna do one more thing. I like a little height on this brie, so what I'm gonna do is take a little piece of it and just put it right on top. So now it's got a little more height, kind of matches the other ones. And I've got one more thing. I've got a fig ball. This is dried figs. Let's see how this is gonna go on. And I'm gonna open the fig ball, and it's dried and wrapped in fig leaves. And just open the whole thing so people can help themselves. Maybe I'll cut it in half. That's a good idea. And you'll see all the figs inside. Oh, all these dried figs. That's really great. I mean, that doesn't look half bad, does it? Hang on a moment. Let me just show you that again. I mean, how easy was that? It's 5 minutes, it looks really impressive, and there's no cooking at all. That's what I call fun. It is Thanksgiving, so you have to have turkey. But I'm gonna do something really simple, roast turkey breast. So much easier to do, and you don't have to carve that whole bird. I'm just gonna go wash my hands, and I'll show you the next part. Now I'm gonna make the most flavorful herb rub for this. Now, turkey really doesn't have that much flavor, so you gotta add it to it. Really bring out the turkeyness. So the first thing I'm gonna do is about a tablespoon of minced garlic. I'm gonna take this rub and put it underneath the skin and over the skin. That's so good. 2 teaspoons of mustard. I'm using dry mustard, it's got lots of intense flavor. And then lots of fresh herbs. Tablespoon of fresh sage, tablespoon of fresh rosemary, maybe just a teaspoon of fresh, that's more than a teaspoon, of fresh thyme. Just gonna chop them all up together. Into the garlic and mustard, I need 2 teaspoons of salt. I know everybody's worried about salt, but it's really important for flavoring a turkey. Teaspoon of pepper. Just mix them all together. And then in order to make it into a rub, I'm just gonna add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And because I like a little edge on things, I'm gonna put about a teaspoon or 2 of freshly squeezed lemon juice. That'll really bring out the flavor. So now all I'm gonna do is put the herbs underneath the skin so it really is directly on the turkey meat. So this is a whole turkey breast. It's actually 2 halves, and they're still connected. That's about 6 or 7 pounds total. And what you want to do is just very carefully put your fingers underneath the skin, and you just really pull it apart from the meat, and that'll give you a little pocket to put the herbs in. Just try not to puncture the skin so the herbs stay in. And then clean hands are a cook's best friend. Just gonna rub half the herbs underneath the skin and half the herbs on top. You can smell the sage, garlic. It's gonna be so delicious. Pour a cup of white wine into the pan. This will give it flavor and keep it really moist. Cook it in a 325-degree oven for about 2 hours until an instant read thermometer inserted in the thickest part of the breast reads 165 degrees, and the turkey will be done. Cover it with foil and allow it to rest at room temperature for 15 minutes. I have some butter in the pan, and I have lots of chunky, flavorful things in the stuffing. Got 2 Granny Smith apples chopped up, 2 stalks of celery, and 2 onions. I'm just going to saute them until they're really tender. I'll stir them around. In the past, when I used to make a whole turkey, I would put the stuffing inside, and I had to cook the turkey forever in order for the stuffing to cook. And so, of course, the turkey was dry. Not a good idea. So I found if I made the stuffing separately, I had really moist turkey and a big pan of stuffing that was moist and delicious and crispy and crusty on the outside. Now that's good stuffing. Okay, while that cooks, I'm going to put some fresh parsley in. Okay, about 2 tablespoons. Right in with the apples and onions. Tablespoon of salt. Seems like a lot, but wait till you see it's a lot of stuffing. Teaspoon of pepper. Just toss it all together. I'm going to cook this for about 10 minutes until the apples are tender and delicious, and then I'm going to mix it with breadcrumbs. You can certainly make bread stuffing with fresh bread, but I like to take a French boule, one of those round breads, cut it in big 1-inch cubes, and then toast it for about 7 minutes, 300 degrees, and what it does is it crisps it and it dries it out a little bit, and then it'll absorb all the gorgeous flavors of the apples and the onions. It can be very good bread stuffing. I can smell the apples and onions. They're perfectly cooked. Apples are really tender. Wonderful. I'm going to put these into the breadcrumbs, and then I'm going to cook the sausage. Delicious apple and sausage stuffing. So for the sausage, I tried a few different things. I first started with chicken sausage and basil. Sounds good, right? So boring. It was just terrible. And then I started with spicy sausage, like Italian sausage. It was too spicy. So I finally figured out that combination of spicy and sweet Italian sausage was the perfect blend. So that's what I've got, 3/4 pound combined. It's really up to you whether you want more spicy or more sweet. But it's really good, the sausage and the breadcrumbs and the apples and onions. It's just a great combination. Just mash it in the pan so the sausage is really cooked and it's broken up. So this is going to cook for about 10 minutes, and then it all goes together with the breadcrumb stuffing. Okay, while that cooks, a few more ingredients. I'm going to put a cup of cranberries in. It is Thanksgiving. Cranberries are appropriate. And just to make sure it's really moist, a cup of good chicken stock. And the sausage. Perfect. Spicy, sweet. Just dump it right in. Does that look delicious? Big spoon. Just toss it all together. Put it in a pan. Yikes. Cook the stuffing for 30 minutes until it's browned and crusty on the top and hot and delicious inside. And I would say that looks like Thanksgiving. This is actually one of my favorite dishes. It's pasta with white truffle butter. I sliced all of these cremini mushrooms. I'm just going to saute them in a little bit of butter, a little bit of oil, until they're really sort of golden brown. This is a great dish for the holidays because you make huge amounts of it. I'm just going to let them cook slowly so they get really nice and tender and browned. Okay, that's the mushrooms. So that's going to cook away. Next thing I want to do is make the sauce. The sauce is really easy. It's heavy cream, about a cup of heavy cream. I'm just going to heat it up. And I think I'm going to do some salt and pepper in it too. I use kosher salt and fresh cracked pepper and 2 pots of this white truffle butter. I'm going to turn off the heat and just melt the truffle butter in it. Just let it melt in. You're not going to believe how fast this dish is. And it's great for the holidays. You make large batches of it. It's good with chicken, as a side dish. It's great on its own with a salad, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, that's just going to melt right into that. I've got a large pot of boiling water, lots of salt, really important. I'm just going to dump the pasta in. So this is fresh fettuccine. It's going to cook in like 2 minutes. Fantastic. One more pasta. That's a lot of pasta. Okay, the mushrooms are cooking away. It's like a one-man song and dance band over here. I think the pasta's done. Just gonna drain it. Whoa, that's a big pot of pasta. So I'm gonna put the pasta right into the cream sauce, and then it really absorbs the flavors. Okay, fresh chives. I think they're really good on this pasta. Ooh, that smells great. So just toss it in with tongs. I can really smell the truffles and the butter and the cream. I mean, how good does this look? Wow. I'm gonna add the cooked mushrooms, all these cremini mushrooms with a little butter. And then the last thing is fresh Parmesan cheese. I mean, for a whole dinner, that was pretty fast, wasn't it? Lots of Parmesan cheese right on top. I'm just gonna toss it in with the tongs. Sprinkling of chives on the top, a little Parmesan cheese. And I would say dinner is served. I make a special breakfast for Jeffrey. It's potato latkes with applesauce. Something from my childhood. My mother used to make them when I was little. Basically 2 baking potatoes that I've peeled. And I'm just grating them in a box grater. You can actually do it in a food processor on the grating disc, but for 2 potatoes, it's not worth making a mess. You don't want to do this too long in advance because the potatoes are turning brown. Not pretty. The big thing here is keep your fingers out of the grater. Okay, so that's 2 potatoes. So I take a clean kitchen towel and just put the potatoes right inside and just roll the kitchen towel around it and then just squeeze it right over the sink so you get as much liquid out of it as you can possibly get. This is actually why baking potatoes are good for this. Any other potato has much more moisture in it. Baking potatoes tend to be a little dry. Okay, fantastic. Right into the bowl. Okay, next I need 1 egg. Just beat it for a second. Right into the potatoes. 3 tablespoons of flour. So it's really like making pancakes, but it has potato in it. Okay, 1 1/4 teaspoons of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and just give it a big stir. Okay, ready to fry the pancakes. It's like time to make the donuts. So I'm just gonna heat up a big pan. You don't wanna crowd them because you want them to really fry nicely. And I've made some clarified butter, which is really helpful. It doesn't burn at a high temperature. 3 tablespoons of clarified butter. Clarified butter is really important because the milk solids in butter are gonna burn and you don't want this to. So to make clarified butter, what you do is heat butter and just let it settle. The milk solids will come out to the bottom and then you pour off the clear golden liquid, and that's clarified butter. Okay, clarified butter is nice and hot. It's got a tablespoon of pancake mix right in. For hors d'oeuvres, I do little potato pancakes, but for this, I think I'm gonna do a heaping tablespoon for each one, just for Jeffrey and me. Ooh, is he gonna be happy? So I think I'll get probably 6 out of this, which is perfect. 3 for him, 3 for me. So I'm just gonna let them brown on one side for a few minutes, and then I'm gonna flip them over. Do these smell good? There's something wonderful about those crisp potato pancakes and that sort of creamy applesauce. Such a great combination. I think they smell like they're just about ready to, wait till you see this. Perfect. Absolutely perfect potato pancakes. Just check each one before you turn it over. Make sure it's just perfectly golden brown on the underside. Hi, babe.
Hey, what you got?
I'm making breakfast for us.
You're making breakfast for me?
Yeah.
What do you
I know,
got?
it rarely happens.
What are you making?
How about potato pancakes and applesauce?
What a great combination.
A very old-fashioned Eastern European Jewish.
I'll tell you what.
And you and I.
And that's us.
Old-fashioned Eastern European Jews.
Ooh, that was really,
And I think breakfast is served.
really good. Wow.
Well, I hope you like them. I have to admit, I didn't always love cauliflower, but then I discovered roasting it changed my mind completely. And then I started roasting it with Parmesan and Gruyere cheese. That made it even better. So I have this section on my website called Ask Ina, and people send in the most interesting questions. And recently somebody said, how do you cut a cauliflower so it doesn't get all over the kitchen? And I thought, why does the cauliflower get all over the kitchen? And I realized what they were doing is they were cutting it through the top, like this. If you cut it in slices like that, you get cauliflower all over your kitchen, and it's a mess. But this is what you want to do. I'm clearing off the mess first. You take the cauliflower, cut off the bottom, because you don't want the green parts. And then instead of cutting it through the top, what you do is cut it through the bottom, is take out the core with a small knife, just like this. And then instead of cutting it through the top, what I do is I cut it through the stem and then just pull it apart. And then you don't have cauliflower all over your kitchen. It's a lot of cauliflower. I'm just gonna toss them on a sheet pan. I need lots of olive oil because I want it to brown really well. Just pour it on. Lots of salt, I want it to taste great. And pepper. And just toss it all together. This is gonna cook at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. I'm just gonna toss it once right in the middle, just to make sure it browns really evenly. Okay, ready for the oven. Well, I actually have one in the oven, and it smells like it's just almost done. Oh, this looks great. Doesn't it look fantastic? So I have 2 kinds of cheese that I'm gonna put on it. I have a cup of Gruyere. Cheese makes everything taste better, right? And a cup of Parmesan. So this goes back into the oven for 2 minutes, just till the cheese melts. You know, I think we all remember our grandmothers cooking vegetables until they were soft and mushy. And then we started blanching them so they were a little crisp. But I have to say, once you go to roasting vegetables, you never go back again. Put something in the oven, set a timer, forget about it, and you have the most delicious vegetables you can possibly imagine, like roasted cauliflower with chopped parsley, Parmesan, and Gruyere. Isn't that delicious? So good. So I'm gonna start with the chicken, about 4 to 5 pounds, a whole chicken. And the first thing I'm gonna do is pat it dry, and that helps it brown when it's in the oven. And then salt it inside and out, lots of salt. You want it to have fantastic flavor. And pepper. I want lots of flavor in it, so I'm gonna take lemon, just gonna cut it in big quarters. Just like that. I'm gonna put half a lemon inside the chicken. And then when it roasts, all the lemon juices and the chicken, and then I'm gonna put garlic in too. So that's gonna roast in. Don't have to peel the garlic, you don't have to do anything. Just cut it right in half, and all that fabulous garlic's gonna be in the chicken. Right inside. Okay, into a roasting pan. And then we're gonna cook it with lots of wonderful flavors, onions, more lemon. First, I'm gonna tie this little guy together. There are lots of ways to truss a chicken, but I hate when it looks like it's in bondage. All you have to do is tie the legs together. Now, trussing's really just about making sure the chicken roasts evenly. If the legs are out like that, they're not gonna roast at the same time the rest of the body of the chicken. Just take the wings, just tuck them under. Just like that. Perfect. Little olive oil so it browns beautifully. Just drizzle it on. Clean hands are the best tools. And salt and pepper on top. I want this to be the best chicken ever. Okay, that's the chicken. Next I'm gonna do lemons and onions. And I'm gonna mix them together and roast them with the chicken. And not only will I serve them with the chicken, but it's gonna become the sauce too. It's gonna be fab. So I'm gonna just do this in the bowl. You can do it in the pan, but I just like to toss it together in the bowl. So I've got the half a lemon that I've left over. I'm gonna do another lemon. It's actually amazing. You never think of eating cooked lemon, including the rind, but when it's roasted with the chicken, it sort of caramelizes a little bit, and it's so delicious. A little bit bitter, but I like that. And it's really good. And of course, the juice makes the sauce, which is fabulous. So I'm gonna cut up big, thick slices of 2 Spanish onions. I actually like Spanish onions. They're a little sweeter than regular onions. There's lots of vegetables. It makes lots of sauce and vegetables to serve along with it. It's big, rough slices. 2 tablespoons of good olive oil. Just drizzle it on top. About a teaspoon of salt. This is why I like to do it in a bowl, so you get it really well mixed. Half a teaspoon of pepper. Clean hands again. Okay, and then we take all of this and just put it right around the chicken. And it's all gonna roast together. All the chicken juices and the lemon juices and the onions, they're all gonna cook together. It's gonna be so delicious. This is my version of the Glamour magazine girls' engagement chicken. Okay, into the oven, 425 degrees, and depending on how big the chicken is, it'll be about an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes, and this is gonna be the most delicious engagement chicken. So the first thing I'm doing is taking the caps off 16 big mushrooms. Just take them off like that. Mushrooms really can absorb any flavor because they really don't have much flavor themselves. So I'm going to put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And then 2.5 tablespoons of marsala. It's a wonderful sweet dessert wine. It's very often used in zabaione. You can use sherry if you don't have it. Okay, give it a big toss. And that's going to really absorb the flavors into the mushrooms. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to make the stuffing. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And 3/4 of a pound of Italian sausage. I'm using sweet Italian sausage, but you can certainly use hot if you like it hot, or combine the two. It's good and messy, but it makes delicious stuffing. I'm just going to let this cook until it's nicely browned. I'm going to chop some mushroom stems, the ones that I took off, and just put them right into the cooked sausage. And now lots of flavors. I've got 6 scallions all chopped up. You want this to be really spicy and delicious. 2 cloves of garlic minced. Just give that a quick saute. And now instead of putting bread in this stuffing, I'm going to put panko in, which is dried Japanese bread flakes. And I just think they give a nice crispness to it, which is just what I'm looking for. So about 2/3 of a cup. That should be good. Give it a big stir. This is really smelling like good stuffing. Smell the sausage and the garlic and scallions, and some mascarpone to make it nice and creamy and hold it together. So I need about 5 ounces. I think this package is 8 3/4, so good part of this package. I always use good Italian mascarpone. It makes a difference. Okay, now off the heat, I'm going to add 2 more things and some salt and pepper. First one is Parmesan cheese. And I'm just doing that off the heat because I don't want the Parmesan to stick to the pan. So about 1/3 of a cup of Parmesan cheese. That should be good. And some fresh parsley. About 2.5 tablespoons. And then salt and pepper. A teaspoon of salt. You want this really well seasoned because remember the mushrooms don't have all that much flavor. Kind of like polenta, it absorbs whatever flavor you give it. So that's the stuffing. Looks delicious. Now I'm going to put it in the mushrooms. Perfect pan. Great. And I think I'm just going to drizzle the extra olive oil and marsala wine over it. Okay, time to stuff the mushrooms. Just a regular teaspoon, just stuff each one. And so when this bakes, it's going to be just tender and delicious and spicy with the sausage. Into the oven, 325 degrees. I can't wait till these come out. What I learned when I ran Barefoot Contessa is I can make biscuits the night before and put them in the oven in the morning, and they're fantastic. So I'm gonna make cheddar buttermilk biscuits. The key to making good biscuits is really cold ingredients. Butter, eggs, milk. So I need 1.5 sticks of butter. It's incredibly important to have really cold ingredients when you're making biscuits because when the heat of the oven hits the biscuits, it hits the butter and the steam causes them to puff up so they're really light and flaky. Some people actually even also freeze the flour, but I think that's a little extreme. Okay, the dry ingredients. 2 cups of flour. Just want to lighten the flour with your cup. It's really not necessary to sift it. All-purpose flour. That's 1, 2. And because I want really light and flaky biscuits, a tablespoon of baking powder. Seems like a lot, but it's really worth it. 1.5 teaspoons of salt, so they have lots of flavor. Okay, next for the butter. It's unsalted butter. Put it in with the flour and just mix it until it's about the size of peas. Okay, now buttermilk and egg. Buttermilk's actually great. It keeps baking really moist, and it's low fat too. It's pretty hard to argue when you just put 12 tablespoons of butter in something, but what the heck. So I need a half a cup of buttermilk, 1 egg, and both of these are really cold, so it'll keep the butter cold. I'm just going to whisk them together. Okay, can't make cheddar buttermilk biscuits without good cheddar. I actually love like Vermont cheddar or English cheddar, something really sharp. You really know it's cheddar. So I need about a cup. I'm just going to grate it on a big box grater. You can do this in a food processor, but I might get the food processor all dirty. I know Stephen loves cheddar biscuits, so I think it'll be perfect for him. So the goal is really light, flaky biscuits with lots of flavor. And the buttermilk is going to give it a little bit of a tangy flavor, and the cheddar's going to just give it so much flavor. Okay, that should be just about a cup of good cheddar. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix it with a little flour so it doesn't clump in the biscuits. Just a tablespoon or so. And then 1 cup of grated cheddar. And just mix it all together. Okay, so now I'm ready to put it all into the mixture. So you want the butter the size of peas in the flour, and it's perfect right now. So I'm just going to put it in the wet ingredients. So cold buttermilk and cold egg. Just pour it in pretty quickly. And the cheddar mixed with a little bit of flour. Okay, that's it. It's really fast. I'm going to clear the decks, roll it out. So, little flour for the deck. Make sure they don't stick. And the dough, just dump it right out. I'm just going to give it a quick knead, not so much that you melt the butter in the dough. Use lots of flour so that they don't stick to the deck. No point in making biscuits if you can't get them off the countertop. Okay, just keep flouring it, making sure it moves around on the deck. So I'm going to do a rectangle, maybe about 10 inches by 5 inches, and I'll get 8 buttermilk biscuits out of it. So about 3/4 of an inch thick, somewhere between a half and 3/4 of an inch thick. Do it in a nice rectangle like that. Okay, big knife. And sometimes even flour the knife to make sure they don't stick. Cut it right down the middle. This is the part where I couldn't find the cutter, and I thought, well, I'm just going to cut them up. And they came out really rough and very homemade looking. I love them, just like that. Okay. Onto a sheet pan. My friend Steven's really busy, and he loves to entertain. And tomorrow I'm going to show him how easy it is to give a breakfast party. So these are going to go into the refrigerator. And then tomorrow, I'm going to brush them with egg wash and sprinkle them with cheddar, and they're going to be so good when they come out of the oven. I'm going to show Stephen that even somebody as busy as he is can make a breakfast party. Are you busy making cheddar cheese?
I am so busy.
I made your favorite buttermilk cheddar biscuits. You're gonna really like them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna glaze them, put a little egg wash on.
Okay.
How's that?
Tell me about an egg wash.
Egg wash is just an egg and a little bit of water or milk. Just whip it up. And what it does is it gives a nice brown glaze to the biscuits.
Oh,
You know, like your mother used to make? Did your mother used to make biscuits?
My mother did not make biscuits.
So I'm just gonna brush these with the egg wash. And you're gonna put cheddar cheese on the top.
Ready for a little sprinkling?
Go for it.
Okay. Can there be too much here?
Never too much cheddar. Can I help you?
Yeah.
Okay, right on top. Perfect. Oh, that might be too much cheddar. And how about a sprinkling of salt? Just gives a really nice flavor to it and looks great when it's baked. Okay, into the oven, 425 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes until they're puffed and browned and just delicious. And then we're gonna make a breakfast cocktail.
A breakfast buzz. I love it.
Okay, this needs to be shaken. for like 30 seconds.
I think
You're
I
on
can
while I
handle
get the
that.
biscuits out of the oven.
Okay. I've always wanted to do the bartender thing. Those are looking good.
Aren't they great? First thing I'm going to make is mac and cheese, which is traditional mac and cheese with the volume turned up. So to make real mac and cheese, as opposed to the stuff in the box, first thing I want to do is make a bechamel sauce, which is really a fancy word for white sauce. So I'm going to heat 1 quart of milk, and then in another pan, I'm going to melt 6 tablespoons of butter and add half a cup of flour and cook them together for about 2 minutes while I'm whisking it. You don't want the butter to burn. This is the kind of sauce you use in a gratin, which sounds fancy in French, but it's perfect for mac and cheese. Okay, now I just want to slowly add the hot milk, and you'll see the whole thing becomes a really nice, thick, white sauce. Add it whisking. Actually, I think you can just... Whoa, that's hot. How about forget slowly? Just dump it all in. Okay, there, that's fast. And now off the heat, just gonna add some flavorings. Tablespoon of salt. Seems like a lot, but remember we're putting a lot of pasta in this. Half a teaspoon of pepper and half a teaspoon of nutmeg, which is sort of a classic gratin seasoning. I thought would be really good with mac and cheese. Just whisk it together. I actually think nutmeg brings out the flavor in the cheese, which brings me to the next thing, cheese. Lots of good cheese. So the first thing I'm going to do is put in 12 ounces of good Swiss Gruyere. It's a really nutty cheese, and it's just wonderful in mac and cheese. And I'm just going to take off the rind. And then I'll show you a really fast, I mean, you can do this by hand with a grater if you want to, but if you have a food processor, it's really fast. So you take the grating disc, just like this, and then there's a post that goes on it. That goes in the food processor. And then the top goes on. It's a little bit of a process, but when you see how fast it is, you'll know why. Oh, isn't that amazing? One more piece. Okay, a little piece left over for the cook. The second cheese I use is cheddar, and I'm going to use 8 ounces of good cheddar. So I'm just going to cut this in half. I love good cheddar. It's just sharp and got lots of flavor. And do the same thing. Last piece. Now that would have taken a lot of time if I'd done it by hand. Lots of cheese. Okay, then I'm going to put the cheese into the sauce. A lot of cheese in this sauce. But that's why it tastes so good. Okay, just stir it in. You don't want the heat on in this process because you want the cheese to melt when it's mixed with the macaroni. You don't want to burn the cheese. Burnt cheese, but. So I'm going to combine this now with macaroni, which I cooked. Actually, I use cavatappi. You can certainly use macaroni, but cavatappi's like that, and I just thought it's a little more special for a party. So put that in a bowl. Add the sauce. It's about a pound of macaroni or cavatappi. Okay, mix that all together. Boy, this looks like enough for a crowd. In my experience, everybody loves it, so they eat a lot. So I'm going to pour this into a dish, and I'm going to do sliced tomatoes and breadcrumbs on the top. Gives a nice little crunch and delicious flavor with it. So it really is macaroni and cheese, but for a party. Okay, into the dish. Now, how bad could that be? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take probably two tomatoes. I'll see how they take the little cores out. These are good Israeli tomatoes, and they're on the vine. And I cut them with a bread knife. It really helps. When this all bakes together, the tomatoes get baked into the mac and cheese. It's just wonderful. So, just right on top, really simple. And one trick is you never want to put tomatoes in the refrigerator. It really destroys the flavor. Perfect. Okay, now breadcrumbs. So maybe about 5 slices of bread. Just cut the crusts off, cut these in pieces, and then put them in the food processor with a steel blade, and just whir it up. Just do it enough so they're little crumbs, but not so it's all stuck together. 2 tablespoons of butter. Okay, just melt that. Pour in the breadcrumbs. Just mix them together. The butter really helps the breadcrumbs brown. Want a nice brown top. Okay, right on top of the tomatoes and the mac and cheese. I'm going to bake it at 375 for 30 minutes, and it's going to be bubbly and delicious. So I have a 5-pound piece of really good quality chuck roast. If I did this with something like a fillet of beef, by the time it was done braising, it would be tough and dry. I want it to be moist and absolutely delicious. I'm going to pat it dry, helps in the searing, and then I'm going to season it. Tablespoon of salt. It sounds like a lot, but it's a big piece of meat. And just all over. Whenever I serve it, people go, oh, I love pot roast. And a 1/2 tablespoon of pepper. Big handful of flour on a plate. And then just roll the pot roast in it. So this is going to help the searing outside of the pot roast, but what it's also going to do is it's going to thicken the sauce. And this is where the big pot comes in. This is a Dutch oven, and it's just the best pot you can use for pot roast. So I'm just going to heat up about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Just enough to sear the meat all the way around. Just get it really nice and hot. What the searing is going to do is going to seal in the juices, but it's also going to make the sauce taste fantastic. Okay, in goes the beef. It's going to sear about 45 minutes on each side. In the meantime, I'm going to get the vegetables ready. I need 2 cups of carrots. And I think this pot roast is ready to be turned. I'm just going to turn it maybe 1/4 of a turn so it gets browned all over. Oh, look how gorgeous that looks. Next, I'm going to work on the celery. I need 2 cups of celery. Nice big chunks. You can do it more finely if you like, but I like the sort of earthy, chunky flavor of the big chunks of carrots and celery. Next is the onions. I've got 2 big Spanish onions. You can use regular yellow onions, but these are so much easier. Just give them a big rough dice. Next are the leeks. Okay, I'm just going to give them a big rough chop. And these leeks are going to go in with the onions and carrots and celery. It's going to flavor the sauce. Okay, I think the meat's all seared. I'm going to take this big baby out, put it on a plate, and then start making the sauce. Whoa. And put a little bit more olive oil in, and then I'm going to sear all the vegetables, get them nice and browned and caramelized. It's kind of like making soup. You always want to start with the vegetables and get them nice and brown. I'm going to cook them for about 10 minutes. Okay, while that cooks, I'm going to put some garlic in. And the garlic goes right in with the vegetables. With a tablespoon of salt. Just smells wonderful. Easy enough for every day and delicious for company. Bouquet garni can be really any kind of herbs, but I'm using thyme and rosemary from my garden. Sometimes what the French do is they like hang the string over the side of the pot, but we'll be able to fish it out. Right in. It's going to flavor it. It's going to be fantastic. Next, some red wine. I like to use Burgundy for this. About 2 cups right in the pan. And what this is going to do is going to flavor the sauce. 2 tablespoons of cognac. Gives it that nice hit. And this is smelling pretty good. Okay, next is 1 can of whole plum tomatoes. I actually choose the tomatoes that are in tomato puree, so it's even thicker. 1 cup of chicken stock. I use homemade chicken stock if you can. It really does make a difference. Tomatoes and the wine, celery and carrots. Fantastic. It's gonna make such a good sauce. Now it's just time to put the beef in. Oh, this is some large pot roast. Just slide it right in, and that's what's gonna make it taste moist and delicious. All the gorgeous sauce. I'm just gonna bring it up to a simmer, and then it's gonna go into the oven, and it's gonna cook for several hours until it's meltingly delicious. Who wouldn't want that for dinner? I would say this is pot roast good enough for company. Ooh, that's a big turkey. I don't understand why our mothers used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to roast a turkey. I can't figure it out. I think they have this thing about bacteria. A 12-pound turkey should roast in about 2.5 hours. And it'll be moist and delicious. Ooh, that's a beautiful bird. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take out the giblets, like the neck and the, ooh, it's cold, it's wet. And I'm gonna save it for stock later. And this looks beautiful. And then I'm gonna pat it dry. I have my friend Barbara's family coming for dinner, and it's gonna be really fun. And she has a new grandson, Timothy, who's just incredible. I think he's about 6 months old. So adorable. So I'm gonna make roast turkey, spinach gratin, which is really good, and smashed sweet potatoes. And for dessert, I'm gonna make my favorite croissant bread pudding. It's gonna be a really good meal. So I'm gonna put some salt in the middle and some freshly ground pepper. Just make sure it's really well seasoned. We're not gonna do stuffing, it's enough with the stuffing. I'm gonna put all kinds of things in the cavity that are gonna give it lots of flavor. So I'm gonna stuff it with onion, forget peeling it, just chop the whole thing up and just put it right into the inside of the turkey. It's great. And then maybe big sprigs of thyme. And then we're gonna have lemon. I'm gonna just put big chunks of lemon in, just like that. It's gonna be so delicious. And then maybe the last thing is a big chunk of garlic. Put a big chunk of it right in the middle of the turkey. And then the last thing is I'm gonna just take these little wings and tuck them under, just so they're not flapping around in the pan and that they burn before the turkey's finished cooking. You're basically just doing that with the turkey. It doesn't mind. So I've got about 4 tablespoons of butter melted in here. Just brush it nicely on the outside of the bird. Okay, that's good. And then salt and pepper. Remember, it's a big bird, so salt it really well. And some pepper in the pan. So about 2.5 hours at 350 degrees, and we're gonna have a fabulous turkey with spinach gratin and smashed sweet potatoes. Oh, love it. Doesn't that look gorgeous? So I'm just gonna wrap it up with aluminum foil. Really makes a difference if you let it rest for about 20 minutes, which is perfect because that'll give me enough time to heat up the rest of the vegetables. Just let the juices get into the meat, and the whole thing will taste fabulous.